I am using someone else's account because I don't want this traced back to me. My sister and I are in a really complicated situation right now, and I'm honestly at my breaking point. Some background. I work as a nurse in the small town where I grew up. I live about 15 minutes from my parents' house to help care for my dad, who was diagnosed with early-stage dementia last year. It started with him forgetting little things like where he put his keys, but lately he's been having episodes where he doesn't recognize people or forgets what year it is. My mom tries her best, but she works full-time and the stress is really getting to her, so I stop by almost daily to help out. My sister has lupus and has dealt with it since we were teenagers. I basically became her advocate and support person throughout high school and college when she missed a ton of school during flare-ups. I remember spending countless nights helping her catch up on homework when she was finally feeling well enough to study. I even skipped my senior prom to stay with her during a particularly bad flare-up. Not that I minded, the guy had serious halitosis anyway. We've had our ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. About a year ago, I was sexually assaulted by Jordan, who's been a family friend for ages. It happened after a community fundraiser when I'd had too much to drink. I won't go into details, but I trusted him, and he took advantage of that trust in the worst way possible. I remember waking up the next morning with this horrible feeling of dread and shame. Even though I knew intellectually it wasn't my fault, I didn't report it. Jordan's family has deep connections in our town. His dad was the former mayor, and his uncle is on the hospital board where I work. I was terrified nobody would believe me over him. Small towns can be brutal that way, and I couldn't face the whispers and side eyes that would inevitably follow. The only people I told were my sister and my best friend Tara. They were supportive at first, and having them believe me meant everything. Last weekend, there was a family barbecue at my aunt's place. I knew Jordan might be there, but I figured I could handle it with Emma and Tara by my side. I've been working on not letting what he did control my life, though it's been a constant struggle. I almost called in sick, but decided that would just give him more power over me, so I went. I was actually doing okay for the first hour or so. I stuck close to Tara and focused on helping my aunt with the food. I was hyper-aware of Jordan's presence across the yard, but managed to avoid direct contact. While we were getting drinks, I mentioned to Emma and Tara that if Jordan tried to approach me, I might accidentally spill my drink on him to avoid having to talk to him. I was half joking, trying to lighten my own anxiety about seeing him. Humor has always been my go-to coping mechanism, even if it sometimes falls flat. What happened next was shocking. Emma said Jordan has the right to talk to me since I didn't pursue legal action and that I should let him clear the air. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own sister was now defending him. She then added that it's been a year and suggested I was causing drama in our social circle. She mentioned something about how Jordan had been through enough with the awkwardness of everyone knowing something happened between us, as if his discomfort was somehow comparable to my trauma. Tara looked as shocked as I felt. I stood there. "You can't avoid him forever," Emma said, lowering her voice. "People are starting to talk." I think what hurt the most wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. I was being unreasonable for not wanting to interact with the man who violated me. I was the problem, not him. During the barbecue, I noticed Jordan watching me from across the yard. His gaze made me uncomfortable. When he started walking in my direction, I panicked and just left. Didn't say goodbye to anyone, just grabbed my purse and bolted. Tara texted me later to make sure I was okay, but Emma didn't reach out at all that night. I spent the next 2 days sick with anxiety, having flashbacks of the assault, and even missed a shift at the hospital. My supervisor was understanding when I called in, but I was vague about why I needed the day off. I couldn't focus on anything and kept replaying Emma's words in my head. After thinking about it for days, I finally sent Emma a text explaining how hurt I was by her defending Jordan. I told her I needed to set some clear boundaries about discussions of the assault. I wrote that while I understood maintaining social connections was important to her, defending my assaulter was completely unacceptable and had damaged our relationship. I tried to be calm and clear without being accusatory, even though I really wanted to scream and ask how she could betray me. I ended the text asking for space while I processed this betrayal, which felt especially painful after our relationship had finally improved following years of tension during her worst health struggles. It took a lot for me to write that message. I must have drafted and deleted it 20 times before hitting send. Emma responded with a flood of texts. First, she was defensive. I wasn't defending him. Then accusatory. You're making this all about you again. And finally, somewhat apologetic. I'm sorry you felt hurt. Notice she apologized for my feelings being hurt, not for what she actually said. She also mentioned that Jordan had explained his side to her recently. The idea of them discussing that night behind my back is upsetting. Dad keeps asking why Emma and I aren't speaking. Yesterday, during my visit, he asked 3 separate times where Emma was and why she wasn't coming over. His condition makes it impossible to explain the situation in a way he can fully understand or remember. He gets upset when the family isn't in harmony, and seeing him confused and sad is breaking my heart. When he's lucid, he notices the tension, and it clearly distresses him. Families should stick together, he said yesterday, squeezing my hand. Edit. So many of you have shared similar stories about family members choosing to believe or defend abusers. It's both comforting and devastating to know I'm not alone in this experience. The messages from fellow nurses who've dealt with workplace harassment are especially relevant right now. I'm wondering if I'm overreacting by setting firm boundaries with Emma when her lupus flare-ups have gotten worse recently. She had to be hospitalized twice in the past 6 months, and I know stress can trigger her symptoms. Part of me feels guilty, knowing how much she struggled with her health growing up and how family harmony is so important to Dad's well-being. But another part of me is just so angry and hurt that she could dismiss what happened to me and prioritize keeping the peace with Jordan. I've talked to Tara about it, and she thinks I'm completely justified in my reaction, but she's always been protective of me. She thinks Emma is trying to minimize what happened because it's easier than confronting the reality that someone we've known for years is capable of something so horrible. I keep going back and forth on what to do about this situation with my sister. Stand my ground and risk further family tension, or try to paper over it for my dad's sake. Is there something obvious I'm not seeing here that could help resolve this without me having to sacrifice my own well-being and dignity? Now for the first update. First off, thank you to everyone who commented on my original post about my sister defending my assaulter. Seriously, I'm overwhelmed by your support and kindness. It's been a difficult week processing everything, but your messages have helped me feel less alone in this nightmare. 3 days after sending that boundary-setting text to Emma, my mom called to tell me Emma had been hospitalized with a severe lupus flare-up. According to her, it was triggered by stress, and she not so subtly implied that my unnecessary drama was the cause. Even though I logically knew this wasn't my fault, that familiar guilt hit me. I've spent years trying not to trigger Emma's flare-ups, and now here we were again. Despite feeling manipulated, I visited Emma at the hospital that evening. She looked unwell and was hooked up to IVs. When she saw me, she started crying and apologized for what she'd said at the barbecue. I just want everyone to get along, she whispered, squeezing my hand. For a moment, I felt relieved, until she announced she was planning her birthday party next month and had already invited Jordan. Before I could respond, Emma revealed something I hadn't known. Apparently, Jordan's family has been helping our parents financially with Dad's medical expenses for months now. His father is covering costs beyond what insurance pays, which explains why my parents have seemed less stressed about money despite Dad's increasing care needs. Mini update before I continue. I checked with Mom later and confirmed this is true. They've been accepting financial help from Jordan's family since Dad's diagnosis. I had no idea things were this tight financially, and now I feel guilty for not contributing more from my nursing salary, though I'm already stretched thin paying my own bills. When I expressed that my trauma shouldn't be sacrificed for financial assistance, Emma told me Dad's medical bills are actually much higher than I realized. His dementia treatments, specialists, and memory care consultations have been draining their savings, and Jordan's dad has quietly been covering the difference. Emma made it clear that cutting ties with Jordan would jeopardize that support. The very next day at work, I walked into a staff meeting and nearly had a panic attack. There, sitting at the conference table with our hospital administrators, was Jordan. Apparently, he'd been hired as a new hospital administrator, effective immediately. My supervisor later mentioned how lucky we were to have someone with his connections join our team. I somehow made it through the meeting without falling apart, but I couldn't focus on anything being discussed. After the meeting, I rushed to escape, but Jordan caught up with me in the hallway. He partially blocked my path and asked if we could move past what happened. He stood too close, saying he valued my family and hoped one misunderstanding wouldn't ruin our special connection. When I tried to step around him, he placed his hand on the wall beside me, suggesting we talk privately sometime. Thank God one of my colleagues interrupted, asking if I could help with a patient. Later, this colleague asked if Jordan and I had history because the tension was obvious. I just mumbled something vague and changed the subject, terrified of this becoming workplace gossip. That evening, Emma sent out a group text about her birthday celebration. I saw Jordan was included in the recipients and had already confirmed his attendance. I texted Emma privately that I couldn't come if Jordan would be there. This led to probably our worst fight ever, with Emma accusing me of choosing to remain a victim instead of moving forward for the family's sake. She said I was being selfish considering Dad's condition and her health struggles. For those wondering if I've considered therapy, yes, I started seeing someone about 6 months after the assault, but my therapist is currently on maternity leave. I'm on a waiting list with another provider, but mental health services in our town are limited. My appointment isn't for another 2 weeks. When I visited Dad that night, he was more agitated than usual. He kept asking why I was fighting with people and insisted that family sticks together no matter what. It was clear someone had discussed our conflict with him, which made me furious considering his condition. He gets confused enough without being dragged into family drama. Later that same night, I received supportive messages from Tara and, surprisingly, 2 other nurses from work. They had noticed Jordan's behavior at the hospital and felt uncomfortable with how he interacted with female staff. One nurse actually confided that Jordan had made her feel uncomfortable at a work function as well, standing too close and touching her lower back when speaking to her. I'm starting to wonder if there's a pattern here that others have experienced. I feel completely torn. If I stand my ground, I risk causing another health crisis for Emma, adding stress to Dad's condition, and potentially impacting my family's financial situation. If I give in, I have to face my abuser regularly at both family events and work, pretending everything is fine while he continues to make me feel unsafe. To answer the most common questions from my last post: 1. Yes, I've considered finding another nursing job, but opportunities in our small town are limited. 2. No, moving isn't currently an option because of Dad's care needs. 3. Yes, I've documented the assault, but only in my personal journal. I'm trying to stay strong, but the pressure from all sides is becoming unbearable. Emma's birthday is in 2 weeks, and I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. I've started documenting every interaction with Jordan at work, just in case things escalate. At least that way I'll have some evidence if I need to take action. I'm cautiously considering approaching HR about Jordan's behavior at work, though Tara thinks I should wait until I have more documented incidents. I need to be strategic about this since his uncle is on the hospital board and small-town politics could put my job at risk. I'll update again after I talk to my therapist and figure out my next steps. Now for the second update. Update 2. I took some time away to clear my head and honestly consider what all of you said in the comments. Thank you for the overwhelming support. I'm back with news that will somehow make this nightmare even worse than you thought. It's been exactly a week since my last update, and I've been avoiding Jordan at the hospital by swapping shifts with coworkers and skipped Sunday dinner at my parents' for the first time in literally years, which did not go over well. The stress is high, but at least I haven't had any direct confrontations with Jordan. Well, until yesterday. More on that disaster in a bit. My mom called me Tuesday morning to let me know Emma was being discharged from the hospital. She didn't outright say I was being selfish, but her tone made it crystal clear. Apparently, a good daughter would be dropping everything to help, regardless of what's going on. When I tried explaining that part of why I was staying away was because of Jordan constantly being around, she responded in a way that left me speechless. We've all heard Jordan's side of the story too, and there are always 2 perspectives. I sat there frozen with my phone against my ear, unable to form words. They'd been discussing my assault behind my back. Jordan had been giving them his version of events. The absolute violation of having the most traumatic experience of my life turned into gossip for family discussion without my knowledge or consent. I can't even describe how that felt. And what exactly does she mean by two perspectives on sexual assault anyway? Wednesday at work started off bad and got worse. My supervisor called me into a meeting with HR where they vaguely mentioned concerns about professional relationships, but wouldn't tell me who raised these concerns or what specifically they were about. They kept emphasizing the importance of collegial interactions with administration, which wasn't exactly subtle. I later overheard two nurses mentioning that Jordan had been asking questions about me, specifically about my reliability and performance. One of the older nurses told me he'd been digging for dirt, but she shut him down. I wanted to hug her, but also withdraw. After my shift ended yesterday, I was walking to my car in the parking garage when I spotted Jordan near my car. I considered turning around, but he'd already seen me. He pushed off the wall with a smile and spoke to me. "I think we need to clear the air before rumors get out of hand," he said, stepping closer. "You were interested in me. I wasn't looking for a relationship, and now you're rewriting history because you're embarrassed." He kept moving toward me as he spoke, mentioning how he'd hate to see my reputation at work affected by spreading stories. The threat was clear. I was backing up toward my car when I spotted Sarah from Pediatrics walking toward her car. I've never been so grateful to see someone in my life. I called out to her loudly, and Jordan's entire demeanor instantly changed. He smiled, spoke in a friendly voice, and respected personal space. But the warning look he gave me as he walked away said everything. That evening, I was on the phone with Tara when she hesitantly told me something she thought I should know. Apparently, Emma had been telling mutual friends that I was mentally fragile and had misinterpreted a situation with Jordan while drunk. My own sister. Destroying my credibility. I still can't process this betrayal. Tara only heard about it because our friend from college called her concerned about me making up stories. Thursday included another issue. I took my dad to his memory care specialist appointment. Mom couldn't go because of work, and the doctor mentioned that Jordan spoke highly of your father and had put in a good word to prioritize his treatment. My dad smiled unresponsive at the name, clearly not registering who we were talking about. Then the doctor mentioned that Jordan had suggested my father might qualify for an experimental treatment program, one that could potentially slow his cognitive decline. It would require our family to maintain good relationships with hospital administration. The doctor meant it as good news, had no idea he was describing blatant manipulation and leveraging my father's deteriorating health against me. I spent the entire drive home with my dad, trying to process how Jordan was systematically embedding himself in every aspect of my family's medical and financial affairs. It wasn't just about Emma anymore. He was creating a situation where my parents' well-being depended on staying in his good graces. This level of calculated manipulation is actually terrifying when I type it out. But something happened last night. I was sitting on my couch trying to relax with some TV when my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. She'd sent a picture of herself and Jordan at dinner, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling at the camera. The message read, "Wanted to share some happy news. Jordan and I are officially dating. He's been so supportive during my recovery." I must have stared at that text for 5 straight minutes, completely numb. When I finally called her, probably a mistake, she answered sounding irritatingly cheerful. She claimed that she and Jordan had really connected while discussing the misunderstanding between us. According to her, he was nothing like I described and had been an absolute rock for her during her hospital stay. The conversation ended with her delivering what felt like a prepared statement. "You need to choose between holding on to the past or being part of this family." Then she hung up before I could respond. I've spent the past 24 hours struggling with this situation. My assaulter is now dating my sister, has financial leverage over my parents, influence over my dad's medical care, and is in a position of power at my workplace. How is this even real life right now? 2 more female colleagues approached me today. They overheard me talking to the nurse who protected me from Jordan's questions, and they wanted to share their own concerning experiences with him. One described him cornering her in the supply room. Another mentioned inappropriate comments about her appearance during evaluations. There's a clear pattern here, and I'm not the only one who's noticed. We've decided to document everything and speak with senior hospital administration next week. I'm terrified of retaliation given Jordan's growing influence, but I can't just sit back and watch him systematically destroy my life and potentially harm others. Your comments on my last post about documentation were spot on. I've been keeping detailed notes of every interaction. Emma's birthday party is this weekend, and the pressure from family to attend is getting intense. Mom called to say my absence would break your father's heart and prove you don't care about Emma's health. The manipulation is clear, but it is painful. This situation with Jordan keeps getting more complicated every day, with him systematically isolating me from my own family. I'll update again after we meet with hospital administration, assuming I still have a job by then. Now for the final update. Final update on the sister sexual assaulter situation. I want to start by thanking everyone who supported me through this nightmare. Your advice has been very helpful. The meeting with hospital administration happened exactly as planned. I described my assault, but having the other women there made it easier. The hospital administrators were supportive and assured us they would take immediate action. They explained that an investigation would begin that day and Jordan would be placed on administrative leave during the process. I left feeling cautiously optimistic, but still worried about potential backlash. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. I got home to find 27 missed calls and texts from Emma, my mom, and Jordan. My mom's voicemail was just her crying and asking how I could do this to the family. Emma's texts were pure rage, accusing me of trying to ruin her life out of jealousy. Jordan's message was more calculated. He simply wrote that he was disappointed by my choice to escalate things and hoped I understood what this meant for everyone involved. That night was very long. I stayed at Tara's place because I was scared to be alone. We ordered pizza, watched reality TV, and tried to pretend everything was normal while I checked every notification on my phone. The next morning, Jordan's administrative leave was announced via hospital-wide email, and within hours I received many messages. 7 more women from various departments came forward with their own accounts of Jordan's behavior. 2 of them were from administrative roles and had access to evidence that Jordan had falsified credentials on his application and resume. It turns out Jordan had never completed his master's degree in healthcare management, despite claiming he had. He had exaggerated his previous work experience and fabricated references. HR was dealing with not just sexual harassment claims, but also fraud. On day 3, Jordan was terminated from the hospital. The official statement cited violation of policies and falsification of employment records rather than the harassment claims. I was relieved, but still nervous about what this meant for my family situation. I didn't have to wonder for long. My mom showed up at my apartment that evening. She sat down at my kitchen table and stared at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was different than I'd ever heard it. "Your father doesn't recognize Jordan anymore." She explained that after Jordan's termination, he'd called my parents demanding they control their daughter and threatening to cut off financial support. My dad, in one of his rare moments of clarity, became agitated and asked who was yelling on the phone. When my mom told him it was Jordan, my dad said he didn't know anyone by that name and asked why a stranger was calling their house. My mom told me this story. She admitted that she and Emma had been focused on the financial help and medical connections and had convinced themselves Jordan was essential to our family's survival. She didn't explicitly apologize for not believing me, but she did say she'd been reconsidering everything since the hospital's decision. The situation with Emma has been more complicated. After Jordan's termination, he had a different attitude towards her. When she called him upset about losing access to hospital resources for her treatment, he told her she was a burden and that he was done with the family. Emma was devastated and humiliated, having genuinely believed they had a connection. She's still not speaking to me directly, but she did send a text last week that said, "I should have listened to you from the beginning." It's not exactly an apology, but from Emma, it shows she is giving up. My mom says she's been severely depressed since everything happened, and her lupus symptoms have worsened. I'm trying to find compassion for her, but I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine. As for the financial situation with my dad's care, it turns out Jordan had exaggerated his family's contributions. They had helped with a few co-payments early on, but nothing close to what Emma and my mom had been led to believe. The social worker at my dad's memory care center helped us apply for additional assistance programs we didn't know existed. The experimental treatment program Jordan had mentioned was real, but my dad had never been considered for it. When I asked the specialist about it, she was confused and said my father wouldn't have been eligible based on his progression. Another manipulation by Jordan was exposed. Work has been positive. My supervisor called me into her office the week after everything happened to tell me she was proud of my courage and that several department heads had specifically mentioned my professionalism throughout the ordeal. Two of the women who came forward have become good friends, and we sometimes meet for coffee before our shifts. I've started therapy again, something I'd stopped after the initial assault because Jordan's friend was the hospital's mental health coordinator. My new therapist specializes in family trauma and PTSD, and she's helping me establish healthier boundaries with my family moving forward. My dad's condition continues to progress, but now I can visit him without the fear of encountering Jordan. He doesn't remember anything about the conflict, but is happy when I bring him his favorite donuts on Sunday mornings. I'm looking at apartments closer to the hospital to start anew. Tara is considering becoming my roommate since her lease is up soon too. We've been friends since nursing school, and she's supported me through this. Edit. I forgot to mention that Jordan left town last week. One of my colleagues saw him packing up his car, and someone else heard he accepted a position at a hospital in another state. I'm worried about the women who will encounter him there, but I've created a paper trail of his behavior. The hospital administration assured me that any reference checks will include mention of the circumstances of his departure. As this nightmare finally ends, I'm trying to focus on improving my sense of safety, my career, and my family relationships. Thank you all for believing me when my family wouldn't. I've read every comment, and they kept me going during difficult times.